Alright, the PC Passion Car Brake Equipment Instruction Manual number 545, September 1925, superseding issue July 1919, copyright 1925 by Westing Air Brake House. Novel functions, parts of PC equipment, location, operation, adjustment, parts, operation, control valve, general hidden lubrication number 3E, control valve with a common exhaust outlet. How to study the air brake. Because of the air brake, meaning with the train control, thoroughly understand the elementary function and principle of the operation part of the railroad men have anything to do with the train handling, either directly or indirectly. It's not only the most important information can be acquired, but the absolutely essential, the largest factor, safety, economy with the handling freight and passenger traffic, with minimum loss for the life of the damage of railroad, rolling stock, and landing. Great deal of the misapprehensions of confusion might exist, however, with regard to the kind of practical air brake information, most essential different class of the railroad employees, practical operation mechanical railroad official of the recent years approved the following fundamental basic approach to the subject air brake education, most necessary meeting actual conditions to serve the requirements engine man, firemen, conductors, brakemen, train crews, generally an actual drive of the train on the road for the class employee. First essential for the ability to skillfully manipulate with the brake system as a whole involves merely general knowledge of the function features obtained with a given system, how to make preliminary tests before starting out with how to operate with the brake valve to secure the best result with the train control of the different conditions that exist on any given road secondary relative to the bind with the importance of operating employee with the class should be known with the internal working of the various individual devices which make up the brake system to be familiar with the parts of the different detailed intricacies, various air pressure for the different chambers, the ports of the passage, etc. Of course, most comprehensive the air brake education for the employee with the more valuable is service of the road. But for the engineer, for example, that may be manipulate the brake valve skill with the judgment primary importance way. This section of this instruction book covered the general hints, therefore intended primarily for the class of employees. Air brake foremen, repairmen, test rack operators. For class employees who have to do the primary with internal construction, operation, proper functioning of moving parts of the individual air brake devices, study ports, passenger chamber, the air pressure for the why and wherefore for the internal operation, first importance and knowledge manipulation, secondary through the desire, of course, to be encouraged for the first time, for far as the time and opportunity permit, but the section under the operation general hits and lubrication, therefore intended primarily for the class of railroad employees. Alright, air brake instructor, inspector, road foreman, engine, train master, all officials in charge of air brake operation instruction, generally class of the railroad official. The employee must be understanding the function feature available for the type of locomotive, passenger car, freight bar, and brake equipment. Should be familiar with the general recommendation, manipulation, specific instruction, therefore formulated, officially approved by the degree given road through the understanding of the condition, produced brake entos, slide flat wheels, excessive shock strips for the train handling, other damage to rolling stock of landing should know that the internal operation function of the individual device. Maintain the apparatus and serve the train test brake efficiency. Test individual device repair shop. The generally improved method of the organization instructs the different class of the railroad employees in order to secure the largest part of the practical results of the railroad. The instruction pamphlet has therefore has been made sufficiently comprehensive throughout to meet all the normal requirements of class. Officials feel very strongly that the most concerned with no effort, the greater practical benefit to the road surface and the spread and with the proper kind of air brake education. We are ready, willing at all times to assist the promoting process for the education along with practical lines every way possible. Price for the instruction pamphlet, single copies, 50 cents. Alright, show the number 3E, control valve front and side view. Alright, PC passenger brake equipment, novel functions. First, the graduated release quick recharge obtained with the previously improved types of the triple valve with the type L and the air supply with the shift of recharging to accomplish with the graduation relief of the taken for the emergency reservoir. 2. Certainly uniform and with the action secured with the ensuring with the valve parts moved so that the clove with the feed groove slowly the brake pipe reduction design valve with the mud being such to the required necessary proper differential to be built up to move with the part of the serve the position brake pipe production continued. 3rd, quick rise in brake cylinder pressure provided with the ensure the prompt movement of the part of direct unrestricted passage from reservoir to brake cylinder occurring application. 4th, uniformity maintenance of the brake cylinder pressure during the top provided with for the same manner with the application portion of the distribution valve. The fifth, the predetermined and limited to the surface and braking with the power fixed for the equalization of the pressure of the application chamber. The control valve eliminates safety valve feature of the previous equipment and both positive and uniform. However, such equalization take place with the brake pipe rotation because of the moving of the parts values to travel slightly beyond with the surface position over production position. Here then flows the pressure chamber of the production, limiting in the chamber of the equalization take place between the two chambers. If the brake pipe reduction is continued far enough, during this time the application chamber remained with the first equalization pressure for the brake cylinder pressure maintained accordingly. Maximum for the brake pipe brake cylinder pressure for the equalization is fixed at 86 pounds as nominal brake power based on the pressure instead of 60 pounds. As previous equipment on the count with the possibility to give the much lower travel total leverage ratio, which if necessary required, efficiency foundation brake ring class for the cars of the conservative to be maintained equalizing pressure corresponding with the reduction 24 pounds from 110 pounds of brake pipe pressure, which was the reduction required with the high-speed brake equipment. Give the maximum shift of the brake cylinder pressure 60 pounds with a corresponding opening point with a high-speed reducing valve. The ensure the uniformity and shift of the operation old with the new equipment mixed in the same in the train. 6. The automatic emergency application depletion with the brake pipe pressure of the brake pipe reduction still further to continue below at this point with the pressure reduction limiting chamber that equalize the parts to move the emergency portion of the bolt cause bolt with the quick action emergency portion to operate starting serial quick action through the train and obtaining emergency brake cylinder pressure. 7. The full emergency brake power at any time is the operation emergency quick action portion just described the dependent only upon the movement of the parts emergency position as these could be caused anytime making the emergency application brake valve, conductor's valve, accessory valve with the full emergency brake power that could be attained at any time respectively serve the application previously made. 8. The service and emergency factor features before the separator person permits the necessary flexibility with the application to be attained without impairing the slightest of the emergency feature of the equipment and low total leverage ratio, which corresponds with the generator overall efficiency, made possible for the use of the two brakes only per car with also a high for the equalization pressure. 10th, less sensitive to the inevitable fluctuation of the brake pipe pressure attained with the cover the undesired application of the brake, the ensure the against the brake creeping, dragging, burning of the brake shoe, delay with the train, and so on. 11. The maximum rate of rise of the brake pipe pressure possible to give the length of the brake pipe, or consequently greater certain with the brake release for the made with the non-graduated release equipment, for the previous graduated release equipment operating with the graduated release feature cut out, recharging the brake pipe toward the rear end of the train in length of the time becomes very slow, drawing away air from the forward end of the brake pipe, large reservoirs, large size feed grooves which take the entire supply of the brake pipe only with a quick recharge feature of the PC equipment overcome the difficulty either with a quick recharge graduated release cut with the restoring pressure of the pressure chamber at each car with the rapid rate of the brake pipe pressure alone that can be raised and flow in the air through the brake pipe valve. Consequently, up to the point of equalization pressure chamber, the emergency reservoir under each car is about 5 pounds left of the normal brake pipe pressure. No air with the brake drawn from the brake pipe. Ensure the prompt certain release. The brake pipe rapid charge with the proper response except for the reduction made because of the practical and non-air drawn with the brake pipe 2 pressure chamber. Brake pipe recharge same rate. 3. The graduated release quick recharge cut out. No air supply with the pressure chamber exists in the brake pipe. 12. The great increase of the sensitivity to the release of the demand of the charge conditions already referred to tend to produce a very slow rate in the rise of the brake pipe pressure releasing from the recharging, especially toward the end of the long train. Heavy cars have large reservoirs becoming necessary to provide the maximum sensitivity to increase the brake pipe pressure in order to ensure all valves of the train responding to it is intended. 13. An elimination graduated release features especially provided with the construction valve during the transit period of the graduated release equipment is likely to be handled with the same train with the car with not equipped with the graduated release brake, especially where long trains are handled with the air supply with the brake pipe would like to be limited to any of the way with the car with the usually best cut out with the graduated release feature until all cars are furnished for this type of the brake. This is required to change the PC equipment to graduated direct release brake either with or without quick recharge feature, vice versa, the loosening with the nut turning of the release regulating cap on the front with the control valve head to the desired position indicated with the nut being of the retightened. See figure 1 and 4. It should be further stated that all functions mentioned have been combined with the requirements of interchangeable existing equipment that have been fully satisfied. And then it shows the PC brake equipment cylinder point. You have your fulcrum, handbrake lever, handbrake rod, slotted crosshead cylinder lever, cylinder end, Emergency cylinder, slack adjuster, emergency cylinder lever, conduity, ports, valve, angle cock, coupling, hose, pull rod, handbrake, lever, fulcrum, brake, service cylinder, slotted crosshead cylinder, lever, slack adjuster, emergency reservoir brackets, connection pins, half-inch pipe, control valve, dirt collector, drain something cock, service reservoir brackets, hose, angle cock, branch pipe T, pull rod. Alright, parts of the PC equipment. The following is listed for the part of the makeup of the equipment and show the description of each, with the control valve, with the corresponding with the general weight, with the triple valve, the whole south, with the passenger equipment, the mounted we close to the distributing valve, with the ET, local running brake, with the operative, with the control, with the admission, with the air, to the release, with the air, with the brake cylinders, to brake cylinders for one with the bolt, with the emergency applicator, with the piston, with the rods connected, with the brake lever, with the rods of the brake shoe, with either position, with the force out, or by air pressure force and transmitted through the side. Said rods and levers, pike shoe they apply with the wheels of the two supply storage reservoirs to know the trip of the emergency reservoir, respectively, according with the brake cylinder with which they are related. Centrifugal the dirt collector connected with the branch pipe with between the brake pipe and the control valve, and near with the control valve circumstance with the will permit with the purpose of preventing pipe scale with the sand cinder of the foreign particle with any kind reaching the control valve, branch pipe with the chain with the insert of the branch with the close with the control valve with the further protection of this valve, and then shows 6. A conductor's valve may be placed inside each of the car with the brakes. The may be applied with the conductor in case of the accident. Emergency branch pipe T with various cutout cocks, angle with cock, hose coupling, dummy couplings, etc. Location of which are readily understood from isometric views of the figure 2 and 3 with the description which follow that each of the brake cylinders provided with the automatic select adjuster. Is simple mechanism with the predetermined piston travel the consequently uniform cylinder pressure with the constantly maintained with the impelling the brakes on each of the car to do their share of the work and securing the highest efficiency range, reducing the danger of flat wheels, which are likely to accompany the wide range of piston travel device. Helps bring running piston travel that is in piston travel. The current brake is applied while the car is in motion, since this time during when the brakes performing the work, the running travel is most important. Are the PC brake equipment controllers? Reservoir, drain cock, angle cock, hose and coupling, branch pipe, centrifugal, drain cutout, strained control valve, pull rod, brake pipe, slack adjuster, emergency in cylinder, slotted cylinder, crosshead cylinder, rod cylinder lever, connection lines pipe, emergency reservoir brackets, connection line, slack adjuster, service cylinder, slotted crosshead cylinder, lever, pull rod, handbrake release, dummy coupling, conductor's valve, live connection, brake rod, brake lever, fulcrum. Or the number 2 E3E control valve operation, direct release, quick release, graduated release, pipe reduction of 7/8 minutes chamber into the exhaust, 1 pipe action exhaust, apply chamber exhaust, 1 pipe brake pipe, 1 pipe service restriction reservoir, 3/4 pipe service cylinder exhaust, 1 3 drill hole and control valve outline. Alright, location adjustment of the operation of the part of the number 3E control valve consists of the 4 portion, equalizing portion, application portion, emergency portion, quick action portion. These valve portions support with the compartment of the reservoir, bolts with the inner frame with the car with all pipe connection made with the permanently with the reservoir with no pipe connection need to be distributed with the removal of the replacement. Any one of the operation portion of the control valve of the compartment reservoir is made with the following chamber: the pressure chamber, the application chamber, the produced limiting chamber, the equalizing piston. The equalizing portion, some of the general way of the equalizing portion of the distributing valve of the ET equivalent of the plain triple valve of the old style brake. If the portion of the directly affected with the variation of the brake pipe pressure of the control, either directly and indirectly through the medium of the other portion of the control valve of the desired charging of the reservoir application on the brake, wherever the service emergency and release of the brake. Alright, number 3, control valve opening with the drain, the 1-inch pipe emergency reservoir, emergency cylinder, pipe 1/8 inch emergency cylinder exhaust. 3/8 inch pipe emergency piston exhaust. The application corresponds with the application distributing valve with the ET equivalent of the control flow of the air only with the strip of the reservoir to the cylinder's brake cylinder relief the same. Nothing to do with the emergency reservoir with the emergency brake cylinder. Emergency portion contained with the double piston slide valve with the control flow of the air with the emergency reservoir with the emergency cylinder relief the same in the atmosphere. The quick action portion corresponds with the general design function. Quick action portion triple valve only operate with the emergency application for the brakes made with the vent pipe brake atmosphere locally. Each car with the close of the vent atmosphere automatically after the desired brake pipe reduction has been made. Figure 1 lower view shows the number 3E valve control valve slide with a quick action portion located in Figure 6. View of the opposite side with a portion separated with either of the slope of the relative location method of assembling. Shows the application portion and the quick service emergency operation quick action portion. Figure 7 shows the no control valve actual section. Figure 8 shows the number 3E control valve actual selection. Figure 9, 10, and 11, 12 show the view of the seat face for the equalizing release sides and graduating valve of the emergency slide valve of the chambers, etc. with a portion seat connects as follows. Emergency slide valve C with the emergency 1, emergency reservoir check valve 2, the brake pipe 3, the release cap, regulating cap, only one cap with adjusted with the graduated release for quick recharge reduction, 4 reduction limiting chamber exhaust 5 small end chamber G, for the reservoir charging valve 6 reduction limiting chamber 7 large end chamber K, service the reservoir charging valve 8 release slide valve. Number 3, show the control valve, the equalizing portion, chamber E with the 9, the application chamber, and the application piston, chamber 10, emergency head, reservoir 11, the pressure chamber 12, the slide port 27, the small equalizing piston, chamber 5. Alright, it showed the piston end facing graduating valve, piston end plane view, and then piston end face view. Face view, equalizing slide valve, piston end, equalizing slide valve seats. Figure 10, equalizing graduating valve, slide valve seat. PC passenger brake equipment, piston end, face view, valve, release graduating valve, piston end, plane view, piston end, face view, release slide valve seats. Release slide valve seat 13 large emergency piston chamber P with the 14 small emergency piston chamber S with the 15 releasing regulating cap open and only quickly adjust for the graduating release for the quick service. Recharge 16 emergency piston exhaust 7 release regulating cap on with one cap adjusted for the direct release. Quick recharge 18 application chamber exhaust with the release regulating cap with the later open only with the cap adjusted for the direct release for the quick recharge. 19 application chamber 20 with the quick action closing valve. 21 emergency reservoir. 22 small equalizing piston chamber F with emergency slide valve C. 23 30 service brake cylinder. 24 back of the application piston chamber M. 25 emergency cylinder exhaust. 26 emergency cylinder and show the large piston end face valve, face U valve, slide valve, and then large piston end slide valve seat with the emergency slide valve seat. Figure 13 show the flange different ports for the control valve, chief of the flange with all of the parts are marked with the shift the readily location portion of the chamber operation with the connected diagrammic drawing with the figure 25 and 240 inclusive of the head been made with the shift the describing the different operation of the air spark with the control valve illustrated grammatically, only with the parts of which one come into play with the various operation performed for the sake of the clearness. Actual construction of the parts have been disregarded. All ports and parts of valve connected performance. Particular functions described and head shown but located with the same plane with the connection indicated clearly as possible without attempting to foul actual construction of the valve. Furthermore, it will be noted that the ports of the passage which are not operative of the various portions of the head but emitted with the corresponding diagrammatic view for exemption 25 and 38 so that they consider each successive position of the valve with the functions have been informed with the valve more easily explained and understand with the reader if these ports exist with non-operative the position shown will allow. And then we're going to flip it. Alright, this shows flanges of the teeth and number 3 control valve. You have flange front view portion, flange back view, application portion, flange equalizing portion, application portion, seat on reserve, quick action portion, seat of the and emergency portion of the reservoir, flange quick action portion, flange emergency portion. Brake cylinder, 1 pipe plug, 1 inch pipe brake cylinder. Alright, brake cylinder. 2 brakes on with a per car with a U with a figure 2 and with a 3. Only 1 brake car. Brake cylinder operates during the shift of this application. Both of the power within the play with the emergency application is made with the give it the necessary increase of the braking power, but the emergency application bringing the same brake cylinder pressure act upon piston 2 brake cylinder instead of 1. This means that double the maximum service braking force obtained with the emergency application will be known, but the figure 2 and 3 be different with the arrangement of the brake cylinder related parts of figure 2. Brake cylinder portion, but the opposite of the direction permits somewhat similar agreement of the hand braking rigging arrangement shown in figure 3. Bringing slack adjust with the connection of the movement with the connection convenient location. Some installation with the 2 arrangement that recommend independently large of the construction of the car underframe location apparatus on with the car. Figure 14 illustrate the section NG with the type of the brake cylinder like U with the equipment of the piston and 3 headed solid push rod with the connect with the levers of foundation brake ring slotted cross like 12 release spring with the force piston 3 with the release position with the air pressure goes off at the opposite end of the cylinder. Packing cup 9 press with against the cylinder wall prevents the escape of the air pass within the piston slotted cross head 6. Is with the servo the cylinder with a handbrake, with the braking, with the work and the harmony with the air brake system arrangement, with the strongly recommended in all conditions practical to solve with the crosshead emergency cylinder permit with the movement of the emergency cylinder lever servo the application without movement of the piston and emergency cylinder. Or 15 servo the application slack adjuster through the brake cylinder. Alright, automatic slack adjuster. The automatic slack adjuster in the figure 15 and 16 brake cylinder piston act the valve with the control with admission with the relief of the brake cylinder pressure with the to and from of the pipe. B with the figure 15 with the port A with the cylinder with the part being located with the piston cover the under coverage of the present with the predetermined piston trouble exceeds. Whenever the piston uncover the port A with the brake cylinder with the airflow for the pipe B with the slack and cylinder 2 where small piston 19 figure 16 force outward compressing figure spring 21 attached with the piston stem of the 23 is a pull stem with the case of 24 and gave with the ratchet wheel 27 at the bottom with the casing with the 24 on open screw with the figure 4. Open screw 4, figure 15 on the breakers relieve with the brake cylinder pressure return with the normal position. Air pressure cylinder 2 escape with the atmospheric through the pipe B. Port A with the non-pressure head with the brake cylinder under the permitting spring. 21 force with the small position with the normal position doing with the ball turn with the ratchet wheel with the pond screw. Thereby drawing the left with a slight leave in the direction of slack adjuster and cylinder. Shortening the brake cylinder piston, travel the forward with the draws, brake shoe near the wheel with the pawl with the dry on back with a normal position, lug with the lever with the stroke with the projection, A with the figure 16 with the cylinder thrust, thus raising outward end of the back, pawl disengaging from the ratchet wheel with a permitting screw with the turn with the hand is desired. So figure 16, so the slack adjusting cylinder to apply with the new shoe with the turning the casing 1 left with the moving lever 5, door with the position shown figure 15. Of the unit until slack adjuster introduced brake rigging, bring with the select shoe closer to the wheels and shorten the piston, trouble the front of the casing 1 to the right. The screw mechanism is so proportion of the brake shoe wherever the compensator with the at the rated barrel with the 1/32 for the bench, each of the operation adjusted thereby with the remove of the danger under newly taking up the false travel which would result in the shoe binding on the wheel. Best roll the tape, the tape with the U of the copper pipe with the brake cylinder, for the cylinder, shift of the pipe at the more flexible, it does not corrode, should always be firm secured. Every time the brake cylinder is cleaned, an oil with the slack adjuster should remove the same attention after the cleaning, and an oil with the test of the brake and include one with the adjusters. 17 show the reservoir. Serve the reservoir due to the supply air only with the serve of the brake cylinder with the emergency reservoir, in addition with the supply air with the emergency brake cylinder. Emergency application is also short for the air supply utilized with the tank with the graduated release feature for the prompt recharging of equipment serve the operation. Enamel the reservoir strung with a rough recommended account with the durability protection given with the corrosion oxidation, accessory preservation, grade refractive, the safety that does with the plain unenameled type of the reservoir claimed with a special process both inside and out. Each reservoir is provided with a drain cock meaning with all residue with a maybe drawn off the recent intervals while with the oil collection will be premature with a decrease of the air storage capacity following list of standardized size of the reservoirs various brake cylinders. Here's 16 by 48, 16 by 48 which has, and then 16 by 42 cylinder used 2 to 14 inch 2036 1648 2 to 16 inches, 20 and a half by 48 by 20 and a half by 36 to an 18 or conductor's valve. The conductor's valve may be located in with a convenient point with and in the car, preferably with a cord attached to the handle running the length of the car. However, the one valve may be placed at each end, which will alleviate the necessity of the core of the valve with the opening of the air with the brake pipe directly through the atmosphere, signaling the brakes in an emergency, and should be thereby only the case. The actual danger should then be open and wide as possible and left open until the train stops. Figure 19, central figural dirt collector. Your central figural dirt collector. The central figural dirt collector is located with the branch pipe within over the protect with the control valve with the entrance of the pipe, the scale with the cylinder, sand cylinders, dirt in the form, substance of any kind. Figure 19, section view with the new stand with the check valve type, in which the detachable enlarged dirt chamber with the check valve with the understanding of the feature with the new design compromised with the two separate portions. The upper and lower portion of the pipe with the connection made with the lower air and dirt chamber, the portion with the contained with the brownish umbrella with the shaped check valve. Two portions are bolted together, joint between the projected means with the rubber gap with the detachable dirt chamber with the provides easier in cleaning and increased capacity permitted with a longer time with the between cleaning periods may be the same as for the control valve with the brake cylinder for the purpose of the check valve with the hold with the dirt with the chamber to collect with the dirt under all conditions. Air brake operation the board and body portion of the machine C with against the check valve C with the heavy reduction pressure occur with above with the in such with the during with the emergency application reach over the empty with the equipment, therefore shutting off the communication between the dirt chamber with the dirt collector outlet. The check valve with the design the plate for the valve stem as to permit the rocking motion whereby any fine dove of which may collect with the top of the check valve will be shaken off of the dirt chamber. Pipe fitting. The purpose of the branch pipe T to prevent the moisture of the deposit of the branch pipe from any cover the drain with the branch pipe connection from the ends control with the central figural dirt collector provide with efficient collection moisture dirt piping in the air brake of the system protecting control valve. Usually branch pipe T is illustrated in figure 20 will be materially assisted in preventing some of the deposit of moisture. Figure 20 shows the two brake pipe top and the two branch pipe test. Branch pipe T. The branch pipe sometimes occasioned with the driving testing train with a poorly designed yard plan for the pickup of the locomotive with insufficient reservoir with the capacity with the cooling pipe with an inch of the precipitation water before passing the brake system. Fitting has interior with a coring design with the outlet with the branch pipe at the top of this air and it just gave with the brake pipe deflected upward with a made with a pass the out chamber I and thence through with the pipe opening inside with the branch over the pipe with the moisture, heavy the particle with the dirt passing on with the branch pipe with the fittings are made with the two forms, having the branch pipe connection with the two sides with the other, having the connection with the bottom, unless otherwise specified with the former. Figure 20 will be furnished. Figure 20 will show the branch pipe T. Figure 21 show the cutout cock. The cutout cock, which if the one is there is 1 inch of the branch pipe, should be placed in easily be reached with the projective with the accidental closing with the handle should be the position that is effective for the vibration will tend to jar open instead of shut. The angle cock 1 1/4 inch sheave at each end of the brake pipe provided with a self-locking handle which locks either open and close of the feature. Figure 22 shows the self-locking angle cock and more inch of the out external movement of the handle flying missiles, loose brake rod, with swinging check, change and other causes. Hose connection make with the brake pipe connection through the train which are there being separated with the switching the hose with the uncouple the hand with the prevent rupture and damage. 23 show with the hooking code double the companies. Dummy couplings are provided at each end of the car, which over the house to which hose couplings should be attached with not coupled to when not coupled up to protect against injury to the hose. The coupling dirt entering the pipes. It's figure 24 shows the double dummy coupling, and then figure 25 show the normal position of this. It's a large air brake system. Equalizing graduating spring, release graduating, equalizing charge, check valve, reposition, application chamber, exhaust pressure chamber. It's all together here. I really can't really do that much. Can't describe that so much over the internet in a video. Okay, operation. Before taking the various positions, assume with the valve the reference should be made in figure 25, shown with the diagrammatic all port for the operated parts of the control valve with the normal position, the position which the various part of the valve would accompany. Occupy all parts properly assembled before any of the air has been admitted with the brake pipe is shown that they here in order to indicate the relation with all the parts and detailed parts for valve, which will not be shown incomplete within any of the succeeding views. All the chamber connection and detail part of the valve will indicate with a further explanation will be unnecessary to know, but the variation chamber that has been designated either by the name or by letter, but the ports have not been designated, describing the operation valve with the detail of the portion from and to, air move of the various portions, position that have been carefully examined only with the surface reference of the path pursued with the enable course to easily mesh valve with the reference illustrations should be therefore constantly borne in mind with a descriptive manner of the incomplete without the constant reference of the dramatic illustration, and the only study both text and diagram clearly understand the manner in which the function of the control valve are permitted or performed and be obtained. It will be noted in Figure 25 releasing graduation cap showing the graduated release position. Just below are shown positions which the cap occupies. Figure 26 shows the release position of the charging pressure chamber, emergency, and serve of the reservoir. When instead of the direct instead of the graduated release, the all succeeding view of the figure 37 to 38 in the cap, the serve of the adjust for the graduated release. Figure 32 accompanying explanation refers operation of the valve cap adjust for the directly released. Figure 38 illustrates the valve with the cap adjust for the quick recharge. Heart release and charging position. Figure 26 shows the diagrammatic only with the part of the operative wall of the breakers being with the release of the pressure chamber, the emergency, and serve of the reservoir being charged. Show the equipment empty with the air brake with the pipe and empty with the control valve with the point indicated with the passes chamber B and A with the force of the equalizing reservoir piston with the equalizing portion with the attached valve with the release position. Brake pipe air pass with the chamber B lifting the equalizing check valve by and then by the equalizing slide valve with the chamber D. Air from chamber D then flows in the equalizing graduating slide valve shown in the diagrammatic drawing, and say clearness and the number of the instant following with the port with the actual valves open and past the end of the instead of through with the graduating valve, passing the emergency reservoir check valve with the in two direction, one chamber R, two for the emergency reservoir, and two for the equalizing slide valve with the two different ports of the connection, one serve the reservoir charging valve and two the service reservoir 2 by the way of releasing regulating cap through the release slide valve with the pass end of the releasing graduating chamber, the E with the air from the brake pipe chamber B flows through the V groove I with the charges chamber E from chamber E with the airflow with the equalizing slide valve 2. The directions 1 pressure chamber to direct, which is charged with the brake pipe pressure for the 2. The chamber K which is substantially with the same pressure the brake pipe pressure as explained. Chambers G and K with low pressure serve with the reservoir pressure, and chamber H serve with the reservoir valves may remain position shown figure 27 being in the portion of the recharging with the completed site chamber K relatively small with the port leading to the sample capacity charged with more quickly the pressure can be built up in chamber G and H. Referring figure 25 will be noted the pressure chamber check valve that prevents the air chamber E from flowing directly with the pressure chamber. Consequently, the check valve is not shown in figure 26, but they also have the free pass for the air opposite of the direction, say, when charging and recharging air reach of the pressure chamber only with the way of the equalizing slide valve during the application on the brakes. The explained later pressure chamber the chamber E with our intent for the purpose of one with the same that may be referred to as such. Chamber F the small with the end of the equalizing piston reconnecting the release slide valve with emergency piston exhaust with the atmosphere, thus holding the equalizing piston valve with the positive release position. Chamber S with the small end emergency position with the reconnected release slide valve with emergency piston exhaust atmosphere release position. Thus holding emergency position and valve for the positively proper position. Reduction limiting chamber connected through the equalizing slide valve. Reduction limiting chamber exhaust atmosphere application chamber. The chamber C are connected through the release slide valve with the graduating valve with the application chamber the exhaust port leading to the atmosphere. The strip of the brake cylinder with the connected through the exhaust slide valve of the application portion of the strip of the brake cylinder exhaust ports of the leading of the atmosphere. Emergency brake cylinder is connected through the emergency slide valve of the emergency cylinder exhaust port leaving the atmosphere. Will be noted in figure 25 some of the flow with the show for a small cavity of the release graduating valve. The cavity is connected with the emergency piston. Exhaust all positions of the valve with no other connections. The purpose of the cavity is merely to ensure that under all conditions there will be sufficient differential pressure acting on the graduating valve to hold the in seat. Figure 27, serve the preliminary service position, service application, preliminary service position. When equipment is fully charged, explained below with the result of the reduction brake pipe pressure, the lower of the pressure chamber A and B, below the chamber D and E, the creating of the differential pressure equalizing release piston to the center of the chamber F is open to the atmosphere. The release position will move on much of the less differential than the equalizing piston, small amount of over the loss of motion between the release position and release graduating valve. Someone with more between the release position and release slide valve during the first movement over the release position. The release slide valve still remain in the release position, keeping the chamber F with the open through the emergency position exhaust ports of the atmosphere, releasing the piston through the first of the move of the brake pipe production and to carry valve of the release graduating valve. Finally, move the release slide valve position shown in figure 27 called the preliminary for the position. The position has closed the feed groove I, which are therefore known as shown with the figure 27, and the touch of release graduating valve sleeve. The function of the valve position is close to the port leading the application chamber to the atmosphere, which is therefore not shown in figure 27. The close of the port connection chamber F the emergency position on exhaust to open the later port with the connecting chamber E with the end of the releasing graduating valve with the release slide valve chamber F. The pressure chamber air therefore flows past the pressure check chamber valve with the chamber F with the balancing pressure check in chamber F and D. Opposite side with the small end of the equalizing piston. Other connections shown in figure 27. The remains in the shown in figure 26 continue to perform the same functions explained with the reference in figure 26. Consequently, do not need be again referred to the opposition. It should be understood but assumed that only monetarily should be regarded with the service. First stage, only the complete movement of the parts release charging the service position and parts. Or your secondary service position, balancing pressure in chamber F and D explained with the permits equalizing piston to move the corner with the difference of pressure that already existing between chambers G and A, with which shoulders at the end of the piston steam comes into contact with the equalizing slide valve shown in figure 28 with the connection of the monetarily made with the emergency reservoir through equalizing slide valve past the end of it through all those shown within the diagrammatic view of the graduating valve chamber D. Purpose of the connection which got the observer that assume the equalizing piston is moved beyond the equalizing piston stop sleeve is prevent dropping the pressure for the chamber D, which otherwise would take place for the account with a movement of the display for the equalizing piston. Displacement equalizing piston is sufficiently greater compared with the volume of the chamber D to require provision just explained. At the same time, in the pressure chamber connected through the equalizing slide graduating valve chamber D, keeping the pressure in the two chambers equal, the other connection remain explained under the preliminary service position. R29 show the service position. Difference between the brake pipe of the chamber A with the pressure D with the pressure of the chamber B pressure explained with sufficient to move the equalizing piston valve with the path of the intermediate secondary service position, figure 29, which equalizing position just have the equalizing graduating spring sleeve, chamber F and the D with the communication valve with the way of the feed port small and the equalizing port with the pressure chamber to connect with the chamber D through the two channels, first by the way of the pressure chamber, check valve chamber E, but then pass the end of the release and graduating valve through the release slide valve with the chamber D with the way of the port path at the end of the shown through and cut off the equalizing slide valve with the chamber F with the second one, the pressure chamber to connect with directly to the C with the equalizing slide valve, pass the end and shown within the cut and slide valve directly in chamber D. From chamber D, the air in the pressure chamber ran through the flat flow path to the end of the equalizing graduating valve through equalizing slide valve application chamber and chamber C on the face of the application piston. The pressure of the compressed air move of the chamber C cut with the application piston, move of the application piston, compressing the application position, spring is done, and the position of the brake cylinder exhaust slide valve closed the brake cylinder exhaust ports, wherever therefore not shown in figure 29. Application slide valve opens the application port, emitting air from the service reservoir chamber N to flow to the chamber O with the service brake cylinder applied with the brake for the air flow, flowing U with the service brake over the airflow of the way of the emergency slide valve with the chamber M, which the pressure is in service equally with the service brake cylinder with the flow of the air for the reservoir service cylinder continue with therefore until in pressure service brake cylinder chamber to M becomes substantially equal to the application chamber with the opposite side of the application piston. Application piston spring return for the piston. Application slide valve lap position figure 30. Hold of the brakes applied with the service brake and the cylinder subsequently equals to put with the application chamber before mentioned. Please notice for the position of the reduction and limiting chamber of the emergency brake cylinder is still reconnected with the atmosphere as explained under the loading the heading release position. Figure 30 show the service lap position. Alright, D, the service lap position. In case of the last time when the full service reduction is made, they say that the brake pipe pressure was not reduced below the point of the pressure chamber, the application chamber, the pressure equal with the flow of the air for the pressure chamber, the application chamber, explained with the under the heading service position, finally reduced the pressure chamber. D, to slightly below the pressure pipe pressure, reduced the slightly higher brake pipe pressure chamber area cut with the equalizing pressure graduating valve return. The service lap position, the clove of the communication pressure for the application chamber, hold with whatever the pressure is built up in chamber C for the application chamber. It will be playing any the decree for the brakes on pressure for the due the leakage for the reduce the pressure in chamber M, the below of the bolt and bottles with the application chamber C, the differential pressure that's established for the atmosphere application piston with the move again with the toilet serve the position, open the application valve port shown figure 31 just enough to supply the sufficient amount of the air to serve the reservoir with the serve the brake cylinder restore depleted brake cylinder pressure for the original amount following the application valve will begin with the habit already explained within this case the brake cylinder pressure will be maintained constant regardless of the leakage until the capacity of the service reservoir release position, piston gravitating valve may or may not return to lap position at the same time that the manner similar movement of the application piston and valve that they may perform no further in either case other than parts remain with the same in the service position other reduction proportion. If the brake power reduction carried out below the point at which the pressure application chamber is equal with the 86 pound when using 110 pound brake pipe pressure, 55 pound within 70 pound brake pipe pressure, such as overproduction result with the lower of the pressure chamber A below the chamber D with the pressure chamber pressure the equalizing piston consequently move the beyond the service position figure 29 which carrying the equalizing slide valve with the graduating valve called with the overproduction position with the figure 31. The relative resistance of relief of the equalizing graduating spring with releasing the piston of the valve and valve C with the remaining surface, although the movement is the same differential pressure differential between pressure chamber and the brake pipe pressure is acting upon the release position and sufficient to move the equalizing piston and the valve with the overproduction position. Alright, the result is the air with the pressure chamber connected with the chamber to do with the substantial same manner explained with a surface position now flows for the end of the equalizing graduating valve through the equalizing slide valve reduction limiting chamber instead of the application chamber the surface position reduction limiting chamber begin with the atmospheric pressure permit the pressure chamber so for the E and D with the drop of the cone with the continued overproduction brake by pressure 2 with the point of the equalization reduce the pressure chamber pressure reduction limiting chamber pressure otherwise addition of the pressure reservoir with the brakes on the control with the control valve unchanged so for the movement the equalizing slide valve over the reduction with the position with the connections made with the application chamber to chamber C we have the equalizing slide valve at the top of the chamber G with the sort of the reservoir charging valve with the chamber D with the pressure chamber pressure blast to the end of the equalizing rage waiting valve with the slide valve with the chamber K since the pressure of the pressure chamber with the reduction already explained within the application chamber is 86 pounds pressure the strip of the reservoir charging is not lifted and held down, and the application valve port is shown partly open, supplying brake cylinder leakage. And then show the figure 32 show the overproduction lap position. Alright, overproduction lap position. Provided the brake pipe production is not carried out below the equalizing point with the brake pressure chamber with the production limiting chamber with a slight reduction pressure for the pressure chamber the chamber to D&E below the help of the brake pipe result with the continued flow of the air from the production limiting chamber the recall with the equalizing piston graduating valve to be returned to the overproduction lap position. Figure 32 clove with the port with the pressure chamber the producing and limiting chamber that prevents the further flow of the air direction otherwise also ported pressure explained with the iron with the heading over reduction position except for the port with the connection chamber to D, path the end of the equalizing graduating valve through the slide valve chamber to K with his blanked off movement of the equalizing graduating valve. Should the brake be held applied to the overproduction lap position sufficient length of time, the application chamber to leakage greater than the air from the strip of the reservoir could not get through it, just ring small with the end of the strip of the reservoir charging valve fast enough to display such leakage. Strip of the reservoir recharging the valve fillingly lifted and making wide open connection from the strip of the reservoir application chamber. From what has been said, it had been plain brake pipe protection continued below the point with the pressure for the reduction limiting chamber the equalizing the pressure for the chamber to have no longer continued with the reduce the accordance and still with the failing brake pipe pressure the result of the differential established between the pressure and pressure of chamber D and E. Brake pipe pressure 1 and the brake pipe pressure for the reduced is below 60 pounds when carrying 110 pounds. Make brake pipe pressure below 38 pounds when 70 pounds brake pipe pressure is sufficient to cause the release position to travel in the extreme emergency position, producing quick action emergency application brake as well be explained in the heading emergency position. Or releasing preliminary release position with the parts of the strip of the lap overproduction lap position or after the application has been made increase the brake pipe pressure below the pressure chamber D and E will cover the equalizing piston valve with the return of the release of the piston described below with the equalizing piston moved for release position part of it being designed to require a somewhat higher differential to move the release position tap the valve with the position to move the equalizing piston and its attached valves. Preliminary release position figure 33 will be known in chamber E with behind the release position when the connection with the equalizing slide valve, graduated valve, reducing limiting chamber, the exhaust the connections made by both more monetarily will be considered the first stage movement of the part's release position. It will be a very important part. However, the release operation valve simply thus is an increase in ensuring the monetary material drop of the pressure chamber either below the type of the brake and pipe in chamber B. Release piston and force with the relatively positive release position shown in figure 43. Secondary release position. Preliminary release position pressure chamber that's connected with the wave of the equalizing slide valve chamber F with the pressure acting in chamber F with the addition of the force of the equalizing stopping spring so as to ensure the equalizing piston valve hesitates in the preliminary release position with a sufficient length of time reduced for the pressure chamber E with already explained. It will be observed that the application piston is still in the lap position hold with the pressure for the strip of the brakes on with the continue with the release for the air with the application chamber the chamber C which does not take place in place of the movement in the next stage release move with the secondary release position and the movement of the equalizing slide valve with the preliminary release position from the reduction chamber that connects with the reducing chamber exhaust port with the atmosphere so the remains of the part with again the moving the overproduction position beyond. Although the other connection made with the preliminary release position shall make it 30 with a perform not particular function other than it has been described by the consequently do not need to be again referred to. P secondary release position movement of the parts release position for the next stage following the preliminary release with the secondary release portion shown in figure 34 but there has been an illustration with the ventilating with the chamber E for the equalizing glide valve with the graduating valve with the reduction limiting chamber to exhaust with the result of the relatively high with the brake pressure and moving release and piston in if the valve with the release position although that is instant equalizing piston and value with the remain shown in figure 33 preliminary release position. With the release position, the valve with the port position, with the chamber 34 with the connection made with the chamber F with the release slide valve with the emergency piston exhaust at the same time the pressure chamber is connected with the wave with the equalizing slide valve slide port with the connection chamber F with the atmosphere that tends with the maintain pressure in chamber F temporarily for the connection with the chamber E with the atmosphere holds all open explained above the until the release position valve with the enter back into the release position moving however the release slide valve gradually increases the side of the opening with the chamber F to the atmosphere until the point of the reach for the pressure chamber F is lowered sufficiently to remember the differential pressure allowing already acting with the equalizing piston start of the position toward the release position release remember the equalizing slide valve retracts and finally stops entirely with the flow of the air pressure chamber the chamber F the pressure is in which therefore rapidly exhausts the atmosphere through the ports already mentioned and the equalizing piston valve that held positively in release position showing in 35 comparing 30 figures 33 and 34 will be noted that the movement of the release position slide valve with the graduating valve positions figure 33 is shown figure 34 open to the communication chamber E with the path end of the release graduating valve through the release slide valve with the release graduating regulating cap through the equalizing slide valve reduction limiting chamber with exhaust and atmosphere outlet chamber with the E with the atmosphere simply in addition with the note that there's already existed explained with the connection figure 33 but it's likely to be bolt but monetary seating position figure 35 bolt of the connection with the chamber the E with the atmosphere cut off movement of the release graduating slide valve release position of the application chambers and chamber C with the way with the valve dimension of the application chamber exhaust with the atmosphere result with the production pressure of the chamber C below with the exerted application piston spring air pressure chamber M application position of the attached valve with the move by the release position opening the servo of the brakes on through exhaust valve servo the exhaust atmosphere of the release of the brake is therefore commenced with the assumed with the release position this valve is return release position. While the other connection figure 34 beside with the just explained with the firm no particular function monetary position with the part of the secondary release position figure 34 concerned that as well that they are now referred to until the explained together in heading graduated release in figure 35. Alright, graduated release position. Already stated the movement with the release slide valve with the release position connects with the chamber F with the emergency position exhaust with the atmosphere causing the equalizing piston valve with the move forward with the held with the possible release position should make it 35. Should be clearly ensuring very slightly increase the brake pipe pressure 1.5 to 2 pounds with above the remaining pressure chamber sufficient to move the part of the success of the monetary position preliminary secondary release just explained and then they reach the final position should make it 35 graduated release position. In this position graduated release is being assumed to be cut in with the application chamber the chamber C with the open with the release slide valve with the graduating valve the application chamber exhaust and atmosphere so far with the connection concerned with the release position the complete with the provide with the parts do not move then will be no with the position of the emergency reservoir connect with the equalizing slide valve with the releasing regulating cap which is just the give of the gradual release the release slide valve with the pass with the end of the releasing graduating valve chamber E pressure the emergency reservoir substantially into which they originally charge named normal brake pipe pressure in chamber E will be remembered reduced equally within the pressure chamber pressure of the brake application. was made after the emergency reservoir with a high pressure, therefore the chamber E, when the chamber E was equalizing slide valve with the pressure chamber, the low pressure for the 10, but increase the pressure chamber E with the pressure at the same time with the brake pipe pressure for the chamber B is increased with the pressure of the chamber E rises faster than the chamber B with a high pressure, which will soon be over the after chamber E with the will release piston graduating valve overthrow with the graduating release position figure 36, either partially restrict the will stop the flow of the air with the application chamber of the atmosphere with the emergency reservoir E with the brake pipe pressure will increase with a very slowly, relatively rapid increase. Pressure chamber E may cover the release position, graduating valve with the graduated release explained with the connection 36. Escape of the air, the application chamber, the chamber C, atmosphere already explained with the connection 34. Resolve of the application piston, spring brake cylinder, pressure acting chamber M, moving application piston with the valve back with the lap position shown figure 33 to the release position shown figure 34 and 35 with the position of the brake cylinder exhaust of the atmosphere with the wave of the exhaust valve serve the cylinder exhaust port, while in the brake cylinder pressure is entirely only partially released dependent on whether the exhaust of the air their application chamber C with the partially complete and has already been referred to and will be forementioned with the connection figure 36 with the node with the figure 33, 34, and 35 with the reducing limiting chamber with the reducing limiting chamber exhaust of the atmosphere through the equalizing slide valve and shown figure 34 and 35 chamber F connected to the release slide of the valve with the emergency portion and exhaust in the atmosphere. Air of the chamber is complete with the exhaust of the atmosphere with the graduated direct release made. For the figure 35, will know with the chamber D with the connect with the chamber K with the air with the emergency reservoir has the exit of the chamber G with the connection with the being open with the movement of the equalizing slide valve release position with the not serve of the reservoir charging valve open with the permanent recharging serve of the reservoir begin once being relative pressure of the pressure chamber the emergency and serve of the reservoir with the ordinary manipulation part of the brake of the serve of the reservoir charging valve will be remain closed and shown figure 35 preventing the air for the emergency reservoir reaching serve of the reservoir and pressure chamber only recharge with the pressure has been increased with about 5 pounds of the emergency and of the emergency reservoir. The alerting connection shown in figure 35 has been fully explained with the perceived that require no further mention at the time that they are not concerned particular function under this discussion. As already indicated, the brake pipe fully retrieved with the graduation release made with the part of the remaining position from figure 35 release complete without regraduation, and the only chamber to take place with such of the release is being made with the movement of the reservoir charge valve with the position shown in figure 35 and also shown in figure 36, which promptly regarded with the illustration final stage recharging equipment, of which figure 35 illustrates the initial M stage is said of the first pressure chamber also retrieved with the recharge with accomplished has been pointed without the emergency reservoir without any of the air being drawn from the purpose of the brake pipe, which is applied through the brake valve with the brake pipe, therefore given of every possible advantage opportunity accomplished in 10 brake valve handle release position, with namely with the release brake with the cover, the increase with the pressure, her efficiency accomplished this throughout the entire length of the brake pipe. After the release has been thoroughly established, the man reach over the reservoir to the original pressure takes place, explained in the figure 26. This says that the pressure chamber has been shoved about 5 pounds of the pressure remaining. Emergency reservoir for the reservoir charging lift its seat, opening the connection from emergency service reservoir and serve the reservoir with the brake pipe pressure continues to be increased with the service reservoir, emergency reservoir, and pressure chambers are found and recharged full brake pipe pressure, air coming from the brake pipe, air explaining connection figure 26. Alright, D, your release lap position. However, the brake pipe pressure is not fully restored with the graduation loop if the brake pipe partially reach over the brake valve handle with the returns of the lap position continue flow with the air of the emergency reservoir pressure chamber, the chamber E with the previously explained increase the pressure with the pressure chamber, chamber E with the chamber B with the non-stationary cover, the release position, graduating valve with the move under and shoulder and release position, stem comes in contact, release slide valve shown figure 36 with the close. Dissolve the application chamber of the atmosphere prevents further flow of the air for the emergency reservoir pressure chamber, chamber E. Flow of the air for the serve of the brake cylinder to the atmosphere, continuing to explain with the connection figure 35 with the once reduction pressure chamber M below the not contained chamber C, but a small amount was sufficient to cover the application piston to move the other piston shown figure 36, on which exhaust valve is closed, for any further release for the air for the serve of the brake cylinder with the other connections already explained. E. Releasing charging of the pressure chamber in the emergency serve of the reservoir with the graduated release brake cylinder pressure may be continued to explain with the figure 36 until the pressure in the emergency reservoir pressure chamber has been come equal account with relatively large volume in the emergency reservoir compared with the pressure chamber equalizing will not take the place of the pressure chamber has been recharged within 5 pounds with the brake pipe pressure carried without beyond the point where a small amount of the pressure may remain in serve of the brake cylinder and relief entirely of the emergency serve of the reservoir as well as the pressure chamber are recharged from the brake pipe directly to connection figure 36. Alright, we're going to cut the tape here at direct releases of the quick charge portion without quick recharge.